I'll tell it the way it felt from my side, scrolling late at night the way everyone pretends they don't, watching the internet do that thing where it latches onto a single idea and stretches it until it becomes bigger than any one person. And suddenly my name is attached to an AI-generated image that I didn't create, didn't commission, didn't even expect. Yet, there it is bouncing across platforms, reposted, remixed, argued over, loved, hated, memed, into oblivion. And someone tags me and says something like, "This might be the most viewed image on the internet." And you respond the way I usually do, half curious, half amused, because the scale of the internet still surprises me even after all these years. Because I've launched rockets and companies and products that took decades of work and billions of dollars, and here's an image made by a model trained on patterns that explodes across the world in hours, and people start debating not just the image, but what it means that it exists, what it means that I acknowledged it, what it means for art, for authorship, for attention itself. And I'm watching the conversation spiral. Some people convinced this is the ultimate proof that AI has crossed a threshold. Others convinced it's the end of creativity. Others just laughing because that's what the internet does best. And I think about how attention has become the true scarce resource, how views are a kind of currency, how virality is this chaotic system you can't really control no matter how much power you think you have. And I remember the early days of PayPal when we were just trying to get people to trust sending money online, and the early days of Tesla when people said electric cars would never be mainstream, and the early days of SpaceX when rockets blowing up were considered proof of failure rather than steps toward success. And now, here we are with AI images where a single frame can eclipse the reach of entire industries. And I see people projecting intentions onto me, assuming I'm endorsing something, opposing something, steering the conversation, when in reality I'm just observing and occasionally commenting because I'm fascinated by emergent behavior, by systems that grow beyond their creators, and that image becomes a mirror for all our anxieties and hopes about AI, about who creates and who consumes, about whether we're heading toward a future of abundance or noise. And I think about how tools amplify human intent, not replace it, and how every technological leap has triggered the same cycle of awe and fear. And I am not declaring anything definitive when I react. I'm acknowledging a moment, a data point in a much larger story. Yet the internet loves certainty and sound bites. So, my casual agreement gets treated like a proclamation. Headlines get written, threads get spun, videos get made, analyzing my words frame by frame. And I can't help but smile at the irony that in a world where we can land boosters on drone ships and train models with billions of parameters, we still obsess over whether an image went more viral than any other. Because at the core, we're still storytellers, still counting campfire eyes, still measuring impact by how many people are looking. And maybe that's the real story I'm telling, not about an image or a number, but about how technology keeps accelerating our ability to share, to react, to amplify, and how we're all still learning how to live inside that acceleration together. Most viewed. The label itself becomes fuel. People don't just look at the image anymore. They look at the idea of the image. They argue about metrics, about what counts as a view, about whether impressions on one platform equal shares on another. And I'm watching engineers argue with artists, marketers argue with philosophers, and everyone seems to want a verdict from me, as if I'm the referee of the internet. And I keep thinking that this is exactly how complex systems behave. Feedback loops stacked on feedback loops, attention amplifying attention, and the AI image becomes less important than the conversation orbiting it. Because now it's a symbol, and symbols travel faster than facts, and people ask me whether this means AI will replace artists, and I say what I've always believed, that tools don't erase creativity, they change its shape, and then that sentence itself becomes content clipped, reposted, stripped of context. And suddenly, I'm supposedly declaring the future of art in 10 words, which is absurd, because the future is never that simple. And I remember how photography was supposed to kill painting, how synthesizers were supposed to kill musicians, how calculators were supposed to kill math, and yet, here we are with more art, more music, more math than ever, just expressed through new mediums, and the AI image keeps circulating, getting translated into different languages, interpreted through different cultures, some people seeing it as inspiring, some as unsettling, some as meaningless noise. And I think that's actually healthy, because uniform reaction would be far more concerning. And I notice how fast narratives harden online, how quickly people choose a side, pro-AI, anti-AI, pro-Musk, anti-Musk, as if the world only exists in binaries, and I want to remind them that reality is gradients, probabilities, trade-offs, but gradients don't trend as well as extremes. So the extremes win the algorithmic battle, and the image keeps racking up views or impressions or whatever unit we're using this week. And I'm less interested in the number than in the signal behind it, the signal that humans are drawn to novelty, to reflection, to things that feel slightly uncanny, and that AI has tapped into that in a powerful way. And I wonder how future historians will look back at this era, whether they'll see it as a turning point or just another blip in an endless stream of content. And I imagine someone decades from now reading about this image the way we read about early viral videos, smiling at how seriously we took it. And I realize that the real challenge isn't whether an AI image can become the most viewed. It's whether we can develop the wisdom to handle tools that scale faster than our instincts evolved to manage. And that's the part of the story that doesn't fit neatly into a meme or a headline. But it's the part I keep thinking about long after the notifications stop buzzing. I start zooming out even more because after the debates cool slightly and a new trend tries to take the spotlight, I can still feel the aftershocks of that moment, the way it revealed how intertwined identity, technology, and attention have become, how an AI image can act like a stress test for the collective psyche. And I'm thinking about how people don't just consume content anymore. They attach themselves to it, defend it, attack it, use it as a proxy for their fears about jobs, truth, authenticity, and control. And I see how my name functions like a lens that magnifies everything. How any small reaction I have becomes a signal flare, and I'm aware of the responsibility that comes with that, even when I'm just being human and curious. And I think about how AI is still in its early chapters, how today's viral image will look primitive compared to what's coming, and how the real question isn't whether something can be the most viewed, but whether it can be the most understood. And I'm honest with myself that understanding usually lags far behind capability. It always has, whether we're talking about nuclear energy, social media, or artificial intelligence. And I reflect on how speed is both our advantage and our risk, because the faster ideas spread, the less time we have to metabolize them. And that's when confusion fills the gap, and confusion turns into certainty. And certainty turns into conflict. And I don't think the answer is slowing down innovation, because that rarely works. I think the answer is accelerating wisdom, education, media literacy, critical thinking, all the unglamorous things that don't go viral. And I know that sounds less exciting than arguing about view counts, but it's the foundation that actually matters. And I imagine a future where AI-generated images are so common they're unremarkable, where the shock wears off and we're judged not by what we can generate, but by what we choose to value. And I realize that this whole episode, this supposedly record-breaking image, and my casual agreement about its reach is just a snapshot of a civilization in transition, learning how to coexist with tools that reflect us back at ourselves at unprecedented scale. And if there's a story I'm really telling, it's not about fame or virality or even AI dominance. It's about adaptation, about figuring out how to steer powerful systems without pretending we fully control them, and about staying curious rather than afraid while the internet keeps doing what it's always done, amplifying our creativity, our chaos, and our questions all at once.